Hey everybody, it's Kyle. Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be doing my January TBR. This will be the last TBR that I do for the foreseeable future because I am currently in the middle of a move. All my books are packed up and everything, and I won't be able to film videos for a while, but I do know what I will be reading in January, and I'm really excited about it. There's a couple of big exciting books that I will be reading in January, so I want to talk about those and some of the other books that I'll be reading. So the first book that I want to talk about that's on my TBR for January is A Game of Thrones, the first book in A Song of Ice and Fire. This is my favorite series of all time. I think anybody who knows me knows that. I don't know the exact amount of times that I have read A Game of Thrones, but this is probably my 6th time all the way through. Could be 7th, but for sure 6th. This series is the series that means more to me than anything in the world. I can just constantly reread it. I feel like Westeros is the most immersive fantasy landscape out there. I just drop right into it. This will not take me long to read at all. Every time I reread Game of Thrones, I just can't stop. It's just like I enter a fog state and I just finish the book really quickly. This is of course part of the big read along that Joanna is hosting, along with Jolene Reads and Scott the Bald Booktuber and Alex Tall Guy Reads, and it seems like half of BookTube is partaking in this one, and I'm very, very excited. I've never actually talked about A Song of Ice and Fire with people before. I obviously have, but not ongoing. It's usually I'm like, hey, do you like A Song of Ice and Fire? And they're like, yeah, you know. And when I first started finding BookTube and stuff, people weren't really talking about A Song of Ice and Fire because of the ending to the TV show. So I'm really glad that House of the Dragon has renewed enthusiasm, and I'm really happy that Joanna and Jolene and Joanna decided to do this read along so that more people could be excited about this again. Some people are starting it for the first time. Some people are rereading it. Some people are like me, and they're just rereading it for the manyth time again, and it's just going to be such a wonderful time. This is a great time to be a fan, and I'm really, really excited to re-experience this with everybody. The next book I want to talk about, I will not actually be finishing in January, but I will be starting it in January, and that is Shogun by James Clavell. I've been wanting to read Shogun for a very long time. As a big historical fiction reader, I feel like it's always been a gaping hole in my historical fiction, especially being somebody that really likes Japan and East Asia settings. And the size has always just prevented me from picking it up, even though, I only read really big books, so I don't know why that's the case. I would theoretically be reading this over the course of 3 months as part of a buddy read with Alex over Tall Guy Reads, Joanna, Alan from the Library of Alexandria, Tori Talks, Rekindled Reader. I think there's a lot of people participating, and that's great. I think we're going to have a wonderful conversation about this. I do know that afterwards some of us are going to continue on to Taipan, because Alan says that nobody ever continues on with it and that he loves that book too. So I'll be reading that one in April with Alan and some others probably, assuming that I like Shogun. Whether or not I finish Shogun in January, I highly doubt it based on the rest of my TBR. I will probably stick with the read-along at least for the first 2 months, and we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I'm really excited to knock this one out and see what I think of Shogun. Next is the big one, the one I'm most excited for, and that is Gardens of the Moon by Steven Erikson. I'm finally starting Malazan. I know a lot of people are starting Malazan in January or just started it in December as part of various read-alongs. I'm actually not attached to any of those read-alongs, although I will obviously be discussing them with my friends and stuff as they go along. But I'm reading this book with Bookborn. We discussed starting this series 6 months ago. I don't know, at the beginning of 2023, way before all these people decided to hop on the Malazan 2023 bandwagon. I know we will be doing live shows for each Malazan book as we continue. We will be doing one for Gardens of the Moon, and then taking it as we go along. We will try to be doing one a month, but we might have to space it out depending on who's available when. I know everybody gets intimidated about Malazan. I'm not really that intimidated. I'm sure they're going to be complex reads. I have every anticipation that I'm going to really like Malazan. I would be very surprised if I didn't. I'm just going to take my time with it. I'm going to read it. I am not going to take any notes. I know some people take notes. That's just not what I do. I'm going to read it, and I'm going to see how much I retain, and I'm expecting to just be a little confused for a while, and that's okay. Next, I'll be reading The Ember Blade by Chris Wooding. I actually don't know the name of this series, but it is a part of a series. It's book 1, and I've heard lots of really good things about this book. I will be joining Patrick Leo's read-along for this. He's doing a read-along with some of his patrons, I believe, in anticipation for the second book coming out, The Shadow Casket, in February. So I will be reading The Ember Blade in January and The Shadow Casket in February. I already have an arc of the Shadow Casket, so I will be excited to jump into that, presuming that I like the Ember Blade, which I have every expectation that I will. This is a classic fantasy story that's more with a modern lens. I hear really great things about the characters and how like the book feels fresh, but kind of tropey in like a good way, kind of like a nostalgic way. So I'm interested to see how I feel about that. The next book I will be reading in January is part of a read-along that I am co-hosting with Alan from the Library of Alexandria. We're doing the Cicero trilogy by Robert Harris. We're doing one a month. The first one is Imperium. I've been wanting to read this trilogy for a long time, and Alan and I have been kicking around the idea of doing it for what seems like ever. And so I'm really glad that he asked me to be a part of this read-along so that we could discuss this book with a bunch of people and hopefully all really enjoy it and learn something about Cicero and the Roman Republic and stuff like that, and have a really good time doing it. The first book, Imperium, I'm not sure what portion of Cicero's life it is telling, probably the early part of his career, if I'm guessing, but it's told from the perspective of his slave slash scribe slash friend, Tiro, who is a really interesting Roman figure. And I believe he's telling it like retrospectively from the past, which is a really cool way of telling a story. I really liked Richard Swan doing this in Justice of Kings, which he said this trilogy was an inspiration for him. So yeah, I'm really excited to check this out. It's supposed to be pretty short. If you're looking for like a historical fiction, courtroom drama, politics type read, please feel free to join Alan and I along with this one. The next book to follow up on that one is kind of funny because I will be reading The Tyranny of Faith by Richard Swan. This is the second book in the Empire of the Wolf, I believe is the name of the series. The first book being The Justice of Kings, which I just said has the same narrative structure as the Imperium books. Just coincidence that they're happening at the same time. But I have an arc of this book, and it comes out in February, I believe on Valentine's Day. I'm not 100% sure, but mid-February, I think. And I love Justice of Kings. I liked it way more than I thought it would. It's a very unique book. What I say about Justice of Kings is that it takes a lot of familiar elements in fantasy that we've seen before and blends them into something that like you feels very unique. It feels like you've never read it before, even though like individually a lot of the elements felt like I had seen them before. And if you don't know what the series is about, you follow Sir Conall von Vault, who's a really interesting character. He's like a judge. He's like a judge that goes around the Empire and solves crimes, and like is sometimes the executioner, and he has these like cool magical powers that help him do it. But it's actually told from the perspective of his assistant Helena when she's older, and her perspective is really interesting, and the way that Von Vault changes throughout the story, but also how she changes throughout the story and how they're kind of diverging as their lives go further. I just think is very interesting. I'm really, really excited for Tyranny of Faith. Next, I will be reading Good Omens by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett. I've been meaning to read this for a really long time. This is one of the 12 books that were recommended to me by some of my favorite booktubers. This one was recommended to me by Bookborn. And I'm starting with this one because I own it in 3 versions. I have the ebook, audiobook, and print version. And so I feel like if I read it, I've crossed off 3 books off my TBR. I know that I haven't, but it feels like I have. So I get to, knock off 3 birds with 1 stone. And it's also a book that I feel like I'm going to really like. I know that Terry Pratchett and I so far have not gotten along in terms of, I think he's very funny, I think he's a genius, but his structure of his novels just are really jarring to me. I can't, just the page break and the head hopping and the lack of chapters, it just is very disorienting to me. So I'm hoping that in a more traditionally structured book with Neil Gaiman, who is one of my favorite authors, I will really vibe with this. We'll probably be doing this audio, but I might supplement with it on physical. Next, I will be doing a reread. This is a reread of Duma Key by Stephen King. Stephen King is one of my favorite authors of all time. He's top 3 for me. And Duma Key was the first book that I ever read by him. I've never reread it. I do reread Stephen King books quite a bit, and so I've always just been surprised that I never went back and picked up the first book that I read by him. But I just never got around to it. And some of them I've read 3 or 4 times. I feel like I've read The Dead Zone 5 times. But I've never read Duma Key again. So I decided to pick it up. Out of curiosity, I went and looked at when it was released, and it was actually released 15 years ago in January, so it'll be the 15th anniversary of it when I'll be reading it. And because I read it upon release, or a couple days after release, that means that it's 15 years since I've been a fan of Stephen King. So I'm very excited about this. I decided after I finish Duma Key, I'm going to be doing a live stream to just gush about Stephen King in general, because I feel like he's so great, and there's so many different entry points that you can start with him, and different readers can get different things from Stephen King. I feel like he's very versatile, and a lot of people will try 1 or 2 books from him, and they'll be like, oh, I just don't like Stephen King. But it's no, there's other things you can try. And it's just so nice to gush about Stephen King, even though he has some books that I really don't like. The ones that I do like are just some of my favorite books of all time. So I'll be doing a live stream for this in January or early February. It should be, I believe it'll be Jordan from Jordan Reads, Alex from Tall Guy Reads, Mike from Mike's Book Review, Sarah from Sarah Reads, and Josh from Red Fury Books, provided everybody's able to make it. I think that will be the lineup for the live stream. It'll be really, really exciting, so look out for that. But yeah, I'm also just like really excited to see if Doomickey holds up, because it was obviously a book that I liked enough to really like Stephen King. Like I went and read like 10 of his books in the next couple months after that, and I remember it very fondly. And I know like a lot of Stephen King fans find it to be like a hidden gem of Stephen King's. So I hope that it holds up and that I can finally refer to it as a favorite of mine, because it's been 15 years, so I can't actually say it's one of my favorites, but it feels like it's one of my higher tier Stephen King books. The next book on this list is Harold the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. I will be buddy reading this with Alex over at Tall Guy Reads, who just finished Gideon the Ninth and really, really liked it. He was really excited, so I've been meaning to hop on Harold the Ninth for a long time. It intimidates me a little bit because I really liked Gideon the Ninth, but people, say that either Harold's like a masterpiece or they just like hate it. I know it's very confusing. Some of it's told in second person, and I really want to be somebody who likes it. But hopefully having a buddy will help that process along. I actually read Gideon the Ninth last January, so it'll be a full year since I continued this series, but luckily I feel like I remember it pretty well. I've talked about it a fair amount, and that usually helps with recall, so I think that I should be good. I might read like a quick summary or something, but I'm excited to see where I land with this one. I would really like to like it. I think Gideon the Ninth is such a unique book, and if Harold the Ninth is even more unique, I just think that's a good thing. I really hope this one vibes with me. The next few are ones that I probably won't get to all of them, but actually when I was structuring out my next couple of months, in January I was going to make it a novellas month, and I just then said yes to buddy reads and read-alongs and stuff like that, and so I don't know if I will get to all these novellas, but my original plan for January was to read like 10 novellas and just experience a bunch of short fiction, because I'm always stuck in these really long books. And so I narrowed it down to a few less than 10, but I still don't know if I will get to them all. So the novella that I will get to is Robin Hobb's The Willful Princess and the Piebald Prince. This is a novella taking place in the realm of the Elderlings. I just finished Ship of Destiny, which was phenomenal. And I'm going to be starting Tawny Man probably in February, March at the latest. And so I wanted to read this one first because I heard that it's good to read before Tawny Man. I expect good things from that one. I will also be reading Prelude to Ashes by Shago Abdallah. I really hope I said your name right. I really want to read A Touch of Light. I think it sounds so good. A lot of people I trust really liked it, and some people say that if you read the novella first, it really helps with like the confusing world building stuff at the beginning of A Touch of Light. So I'm going to read that first and see how it goes. I also want to try The Fall by Ryan Cahill. Again, if you notice a pattern, I'm trying to read these prequel novellas to these longer series by self-pub authors to try and give them a chance to impress me. All of these books are on my TBR no matter what, regardless of what I think of the prequel novellas. If one of the novellas doesn't vibe with me, I'm not going to suddenly take the other books off my TBR. But what I will do is if I really like one of the novellas, I will probably prioritize starting the series sooner than I would otherwise. So I'm going to try out The Fall by Ryan Cahill. I've been hearing great things about his series too. And the last novella I will probably get to in January is Kate Elliott's The Keeper 6. This one comes out in January. I have an arc of it. It's like 110 pages, so I'm pretty sure that I'll get to it. And I haven't read any Kate Elliott yet, but she's an author that I really want to read a lot from in the coming years and months. And so I thought I would start with this novella that is coming out in January and see what I think of it. I don't know anything about it. I think it's just that a mom is looking for her son, which is more of a unique premise and fantasy than you think that it would be. And so hopefully I like it. Alright, the next few here are books I'll put in if I have enough time. Normally, I have some big books in January, but I also know Game of Thrones will go really quickly. Shogun, there's a stopgap where I can stop early and wait till next month if I need to. And so I think I might have some more time. So the first book that I might read in January is Under the Eagle by Simon Scarrow. This is the first book in this Eagle series. I think it's 22 books right now. And just a long-running historical fiction series about two centurions, I believe, in 1st century Roman Empire. And I own a bunch of these books. I've never read a word of Simon Scarrow's. I think I own 16 of these 22 novels or whatever. It's absurd. And I've never read them. But I always come across them in used bookstores, and then one of my used bookstores was going out of business, and so every book there was $1, which was crazy. And I got 8 of these books there because I was well, if they're $1, why wouldn't I get them? All this to say, I really need to start this series because what if I don't like it? I almost hope that I don't like it because then I can just get rid of 16 books. Wouldn't that be nice? Just unhaul 16 books? But I'm pretty sure that I will like it. I don't expect them to be new favorites. I do think they'll just be kind of like easy military fiction, Roman history kind of stuff that I can just slot in between bigger books when I want my brain to take a bit of a break. But yeah, I really like Roman history and Roman historical fiction, and missing out on Simon Scarrow is just weird. So I really want to start him. I'm gonna hopefully get that in January. I also want to read Adrian Tchaikovsky's newest book, The City of Last Chances, in January. I will be buddy reading this with Jordan over at Jordan Reads. We're thinking late January or early February, most likely. And I'm really excited for this. Alan gave a rave review to this one, and I will be reading this one for sure. It's just a matter of when, and I expect really good things. Adrian Tchaikovsky has become one of my favorite authors by this point. And the last two, it's probably going to be an either-or situation depending on my mood, but I will start them both first quarter-ish in 2023 if I don't start them in January. The first one is Wizard of Earthsea by Ursula K. Le Guin. This is a very short book. It's a classic. I hear great things about Ursula K. Le Guin, and I feel like it's a book that I should have read by now, and it's also really short. So I will be reading that and hopefully in January. And if I don't read that one, I will try to read The Black Company by Glenn Cook. The Black Company just sounds super up my alley. Jake has really loved it. Jimmy's really loved the first one, and I know Alan really likes it. And so I'm just really hopeful that I will really like The Black Company, and I will try to read that in January, or at least in the next couple months after that. But that's my January TBR. What are you guys planning in January? I have a pretty ambitious month, but I also know that I probably won't be going as many places in January because it's very, very cold here where I live in January. So hopefully I can get through it all. Either way, thanks for watching, guys. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.